Michael and his wife, Nora, along with their two children, planned a family vacation they had been looking forward to. A vacation in Hawaii had been their dream for a long time, and everything seemed perfect. Michael felt that this moment would be one of the happiest memories of their lives. The warm air and the soothing beach atmosphere gave them hope that this vacation would be a wonderful memory. They stayed at a luxurious resort located on the beach. The resort had stunning views, with clear blue sea and palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. Michael enjoyed every second with his family, from breakfast together on the resort terrace to swimming in the warm sea with their children. Although everything seemed ideal, something was bothering Michael. One quiet evening, while they were enjoying dinner, a man came up to greet them. The man introduced himself as Adam, and soon after, he claimed to have met Nora at a nursing conference several years ago. Adam seemed very familiar with Nora, talking comfortably and laughing together. Michael watched their every move, sensing that something was unusual. However, he tried not to jump to conclusions, trying to enjoy the evening with his family. The next day, Michael noticed that Adam often approached Nora, talking to her at length, sometimes alone. Michael felt increasingly alienated. He often felt a tension building between them, as if Nora was starting to focus more on Adam than on her family. However, Michael tried to convince himself that this was just part of the vacation and there was nothing to worry about. That morning, they planned to visit several tourist attractions around the resort. However, as they headed to the first location, Michael sensed that something was different about Nora. Her usual happy smile now seemed forced. As they drove around, Michael noticed that Nora often glanced at her cell phone and seemed distracted. Maybe it was just his suspicious nature, Michael thought. However, he couldn't ignore the uncomfortable feeling that lingered in his heart. That night, Michael decided to take a walk alone around the resort, hoping that the night air would refresh his troubled mind. He walked along the deserted beach, listening to the soothing sound of the waves, but his uneasiness did not go away. Suddenly, his eyes caught a sight that made his blood run cold. In the distance, he saw Nora and Adam standing outside the resort, talking intimately. Adam was holding Nora's hand gently, and suddenly they moved closer and kissed. Michael stood frozen in place, his body stiff. The world around him suddenly felt dark. Feelings of devastation and disappointment crept into his every step as he walked back to their room. His steps felt heavy, as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. When he arrived at the room, he lay down on the bed, waiting for Nora to return. When the door opened, Nora entered calmly, as if nothing had happened. She smiled softly at Michael and asked if he wanted to sleep. Michael could only respond with a blank stare, his heart feeling broken, but he couldn't speak. That night, Michael lay awake, thinking about what he had seen. The feelings raging inside him were becoming uncontrollable. There was a mixture of anger, disappointment, and sadness. However, he refrained from immediately asking Nora what had happened. He felt he needed time to digest everything, to find a way to face such a devastating reality. What should have been a happy vacation had turned into a journey full of confusion. Michael's feelings were increasingly torn between false happiness and a truth he did not want to accept. When midnight arrived, Michael couldn't sleep. Thoughts that shook his heart continued to buzz, like the sound of waves that never stopped. He felt trapped in a lie, caught in a reality that was slowly beginning to unfold. Outside the room, the quiet atmosphere of the resort couldn't block the anxiety inside him. Michael knew that his life would change after this night, and he had to be ready to face the reality that was coming. However, for now, he could only lie there, thinking about what he would do next. His feelings of confusion and hurt grew deeper, as if the world he had known had changed in an instant. That morning, Michael woke up feeling heavy, as if something was weighing on his chest. The vacation that was supposed to be a wonderful memory now felt so empty. He looked at Nora, who was still sleeping peacefully beside him. However, in his heart, Michael felt that nothing was peaceful anymore. The feelings of anxiety and suspicion that continued to haunt his thoughts began to erode the peace he was trying to maintain. After breakfast, They decided to spend the day exploring the resort. Michael didn't want to appear too anxious in front of the children, so he tried to keep smiling and mingling. However, his eyes couldn't stray from Nora, who seemed to be avoiding him more often. Every time they spoke, there was an unmistakable tension. Michael felt as if Nora was pretending, and that made him feel even more uncertain. Adam reappeared around them several times, inviting Nora to talk in corners of the resort. Michael watched their interactions from a distance. Every time Adam was near Nora, Michael felt something was wrong, even though there was no obvious sign of an affair. However, his instincts grew stronger. He sensed there was more than just friendship between Adam and Nora. Once, they all went together to a playground at the resort. Michael noticed how Adam was always close to Nora, lightly touching her hand, or speaking in such a familiar tone. Even when Michael looked at Nora, he couldn't help but feel a change in her attitude. There was a distance between them, something he couldn't touch, even though they were so close. Amidst his confusion and suspicion, Michael decided to talk to an old friend who was also vacationing at the resort. A friend he thought could provide an objective perspective on the situation. As they sat by the pool, Michael opened up about his feelings. "There's something strange about Nora and Adam," Michael said, his eyes fixed on his friend sitting across from him. His friend, let's call him Mark, furrowed his brow, seeming to understand what Michael meant. "What do you mean? What exactly is going on?" asked Mark. Michael sighed deeply, feeling a heavy weight in his chest. "I don't know, but something makes me feel uncomfortable. Every time Adam is close to Nora, I feel a distance between us. I saw something strange that night, and I can't ignore it." Mark was silent for a moment, as if thinking. Then, he looked at Michael seriously. "You have to talk to Nora directly. Don't let those feelings control your mind. I know it's difficult, but only by speaking honestly will you know what really happened." Mark's statement reminded Michael that he couldn't continue living with suspicion without finding out the truth. However, his heart still felt heavy about facing it. What would happen if he actually opened up that conversation with Nora? Was he ready to hear the truth that might break his heart? The days passed quickly. Michael felt increasingly anxious and confused. The vacation, which was supposed to be a moment to enjoy family togetherness, only added to his worries. He felt he could no longer hide his growing suspicions. That night, when they were resting in their room, Michael saw Nora engrossed in her cell phone. He remembered the previous night when he saw Nora kissing Adam. As if it were a sign, Michael felt he could no longer ignore the suspicion that was weighing on his mind. With a heart full of confusion, Michael finally decided to take action. He got out of bed and approached Nora, who was still busy with her phone. Without saying a word, he reached out his hand and asked for Nora's phone. Nora looked surprised, but without much resistance, she handed her phone to Michael. The phone felt so heavy in Michael's hand, as if he were holding the whole world, which was now in shambles. With trembling hands, he opened the messages on Nora's phone. That was when he found the evidence he had been trying to avoid. Sweet messages between Nora and Adam that clearly showed a relationship that was more than just friends. The feelings he felt at that moment were difficult to describe: disappointed, angry, and devastated. Everything began to fall apart. Michael felt the world he had built with Nora crumbling before his eyes. However, before he could vent all his emotions, Nora turned and looked at him. Her face was blank, as if nothing had happened. "Michael, I can explain everything," said Nora, her voice weak and full of regret. Michael looked at her, but the words that came out of his mouth felt hollow. "What do you need to explain, Nora? I've already seen everything." At that moment, Michael knew his life would never be the same again. The morning after that devastating night, Michael couldn't sleep. His heart was filled with burning anger, but he also felt as if there was a chasm between himself and the world he had known. So many lies had been revealed in one night, and now he felt trapped in a bitter reality. When Nora tried to talk to him, he remained silent, not knowing what to say. No words were strong enough to describe his feelings at that moment. However, Michael knew that he had to face this reality head-on. He could no longer dwell in his confusion. He decided to meet Adam, the man he had always considered a friend and who had now ruined his life. Michael knew that this confrontation would not be easy, but he had to find answers. After finding out where Adam was at the resort, Michael found him near the pool, sitting alone with a cup of coffee. Adam seemed calm, as if nothing was wrong. When he saw Michael approaching, he smiled and waved. "Sure, Michael. How are you?" Adam greeted him, unaware of how Michael's heart was filled with hatred and pain. Michael stopped a few steps away from Adam. He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions that were about to explode. "Adam, I want to talk," Michael said in a broken voice, full of tension. Adam looked at him, a little confused, but he showed no signs of concern. "Sure, what is it?" Without further ado, Michael stared intently into Adam's eyes. "I know about your relationship with Nora." Adam was silent for a moment, his expression slightly changing, but he tried to remain calm. "Michael, I don't know where to start," he replied softly. "I wanted to tell you earlier, but—" "So, it's true," Michael interrupted, his voice now trembling with uncontrollable emotion. "You two have been in this relationship long before this vacation, haven't you?" Adam lowered his head, unable to look Michael in the eye. "Yes, Michael. I'm sorry. It's been going on for several years. We're involved in more than just friendship, and we felt we couldn't hide it anymore." Hearing this confession, Michael felt a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. All this time, he had tried not to suspect anything, trying to keep their family intact. But now, this bitter truth only exacerbated his pain. Why? Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did I have to find out like this? Adam was silent. "We didn't know how to face you, Nora, and I never meant to hurt you, but we felt that there were feelings we couldn't avoid." Michael stared at him, his heart filled with confusion and deep anger. "You know, Adam, I considered you a friend. I trusted you, and this is what you did. What you did was not only a betrayal of me, but also of the family I've built all this time." Adam looked remorseful, but he couldn't deny the truth. "I didn't want this, Michael. I'm so sorry." Michael turned away, staring at the calm sea in the distance. "Nothing can change what has already happened," Michael said softly, almost inaudibly. "I've seen enough. I don't need apologies, Adam. What I need now is an answer. What are you going to do now?" Adam could only remain silent, not knowing how to respond. Michael turned and began to walk away, leaving Adam standing still, as if he didn't know what to do with himself. When Michael returned to his room, he felt as if he had used up all his energy. The confrontation with Adam gave Michael a little relief, even though a greater pain still ruled his heart. However, he knew he could not return to the way things were. This betrayal had changed everything. Nora, who was still in the room, looked at Michael with regret-filled eyes. "Michael, I know this is very painful. I never meant to hurt you," she said with a trembling voice. Michael looked at her with disappointment. "But it's already happened, Nora," he replied flatly. "You've destroyed everything. There's nothing we can do to change it." Nora lowered her head, tears beginning to roll down her cheeks. "Michael, I'm truly sorry. I don't know what to do now." Michael sighed deeply, feeling his confusion deepen. "What should we do now, Nora? I've seen enough. I don't know where to go from here." At that moment, Michael knew that a big decision had to be made. Nothing could heal this pain, and even though he loved Nora, he could no longer continue his life with lies constantly gnawing at his heart. That morning, Michael sat at the resort dining table with a troubled expression and a chaotic mind. Nora sat across from him, looking tired and hopeless. The atmosphere between them grew tense, as if there was an unbridgeable distance between them. Michael felt a sense of emptiness enveloping him, as if the whole world he had built with Nora had suddenly collapsed. After a difficult conversation with Adam, Michael decided that he could no longer live a lie. He needed clarity, and more importantly, he needed the truth. He felt it was impossible to continue living with Nora without knowing exactly what had happened between her and Adam. Michael made the decision to search for more evidence about Adam's background. Even though he was already feeling hurt enough, Michael knew that in order to move forward, he had to know the whole truth. He couldn't just guess or live in confusion. That day, Michael decided not to go on the vacation they had planned. He chose to go to the lawyer's office he had contacted a few days earlier. His mind was filled with questions. What about his future? What about his children? Everything felt so profound, and he knew he had to make a big decision soon. At the lawyer's office, Michael revealed everything that had happened, from his suspicions about Nora and Adam to his painful discoveries. His lawyer, an experienced woman, listened carefully. "I understand how difficult this is for you, Michael," the lawyer said calmly. "However, if you decide to proceed with the divorce, we must be prepared with all the evidence. You need to make sure that your actions are supported by valid evidence." Michael felt confused, but he knew this was the path he had to take. The lawyer gave him several options, including checking Adam's track record to see if he had ever been involved in other problems, especially those related to affairs or fraud. The next day, after getting advice from his lawyer, Michael investigated Adam further. He discovered that Adam was not the person he thought he was. Adam turned out to have a history of bad relationships with several previous women, all of which ended in infidelity and betrayal. Michael felt increasingly disappointed and angry, but he knew he had to face this reality with a cool head. That night, when they returned to their room at the resort, Michael felt more prepared to talk to Nora again. He decided to ask more difficult questions in order to find clear answers. "Nora," Michael said in a calmer voice, even though his heart was in turmoil, "I found out more about Adam. I know more about your relationship than I wanted to. I want you to be honest with me. Is there anything else I need to know?" Nora looked at Michael, her eyes full of regret and tears. "Michael, I'm sorry. I don't know how to explain everything. Adam and I have been close for several years, and I couldn't avoid those feelings. I tried to hold on, but I didn't know how to deal with my true feelings. I'm sorry." Michael looked at Nora with confusion. "So, this isn't just about Adam and me, is it? It's about our honesty, about us as a couple. Why didn't you tell me first, Nora? Why did it have to come out like this?" Nora bit her lip, tears beginning to flow. "I was afraid, Michael. I was afraid you would hate me, and I didn't want that. I know I was wrong, and I can't change what has happened. But I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix everything." Michael felt his heart breaking more and more as he heard Nora's regret. But there was something bigger he felt. He felt he had lived too long in lies and betrayal. Sometimes, regret comes too late, and this time it was too late. "You've ruined everything, Nora," Michael said softly. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I have to think about my future, about our children. I can't continue living with this lie." With those words, Michael knew that divorce was the only way forward. Although Michael's heart felt broken, he could no longer allow himself to be trapped in a relationship full of lies and betrayal. He had been hurt enough, and now it was time to move on, even though it wasn't easy. A few months after the divorce, Michael felt himself slowly beginning to recover. Although the long and emotional legal process left deep scars, he began to feel a glimmer of hope for his new life. He tried to stay focused on his children and live a more peaceful life, even though every step felt difficult. Michael's days were often filled with feelings of loneliness and emptiness. Every corner of the house felt unfamiliar without Nora's presence. His children, although they did not fully understand, began to sense the major changes in their family life. Michael felt guilty for having to put them through such a difficult situation, but he knew that this was the best decision for all of them. One afternoon, while Michael was sitting in the backyard, an old friend named Megan contacted him via text message. Megan was a friend he had known for a long time, but they had never been particularly close. She worked at a nearby hospital, and they had interacted a few times at the same community events. Michael didn't expect much, but he decided to respond. "Hey, Michael, I know it's been a long time since we've seen each other, but if you need a friend to talk to, I'm always here. I know what you're going through, and if you're feeling lonely, I want to be there for you." Megan's message came at just the right time. Michael felt so isolated and longed for someone he could talk to without being judged. He replied to the message, starting a light conversation that eventually grew deeper. Megan offered to listen, and slowly, they began to share more stories with each other. Every time they met, Michael felt a calmness he hadn't felt since his divorce from Nora. Megan not only cared about Michael's situation, but also gave him space to talk without feeling pressured. Their conversations were often filled with laughter and comfort, and Michael began to feel a warmth that had been missing in his life for a long time. A few weeks later, after they had grown closer, Megan invited Michael and his children to join a family event she was hosting at her house. Michael was hesitant at first, afraid that his presence would ruin the atmosphere, but Megan assured him that his children would be made to feel welcome. On the day of the event, Michael felt a little awkward, but the presence of his children gave him some relief. They played with Megan's children, laughing and sharing stories. Michael began to feel that there was a life he could enjoy again, even if it was full of challenges. In the midst of this togetherness, he saw Megan in a different light, not just as an old friend, but as someone who made his heart feel lighter, more alive. Several months passed, and their relationship grew closer. Michael began to open his heart to Megan, even though he hadn't completely forgotten everything that had happened. But he felt that he had finally found someone who understood him unconditionally. Megan wasn't Nora, but she provided the warmth and comfort that had been missing in his life all this time. True love, Michael thought, didn't have to come in a perfect way, but with a calming presence. One night, after dinner at Megan's house, Michael sat with her children in the living room. They were watching a family movie, laughing together, and for the first time in a long time, Michael felt pure happiness. He realized that even though his life hadn't gone according to plan, he could still find happiness and peace. When the children were asleep and the atmosphere was calm, Megan sat down next to Michael. She held Michael's hand gently, and they exchanged smiles. Michael felt a peace he had never experienced before, a peace that came not from a perfect life, but from acceptance, understanding, and unconditional love. "Thank you, Megan," Michael said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you. I feel like I found a part of myself that was missing." Megan smiled, looking at him intently. "We're both on a journey, Michael. I just want you to know that you're not alone." As the days passed, Michael became more and more convinced that he had made the right decision for himself and his children. Although his past still haunted him, he knew he didn't have to live in the shadow of that betrayal forever. With Megan by his side, Michael began to build a happier life, one that was more open to love and new opportunities. When Megan finally became pregnant with their first child, Grace, Michael felt his life truly change. He felt blessed and hopeful, something he never thought he would feel again after his divorce from Nora. Grace's presence brought more peace to their family, and Michael promised to be the best father he could be to his children. Now, he knew that true love didn't have to be proven with beautiful words, but with real actions and sincere affection. He no longer sought perfection in his life, but accepted every moment as part of a greater journey. And with Megan and their children, Michael felt more alive than ever before. Michael's life with Megan grew more harmonious. They built their little happiness together with their children, filling their days with laughter and sweet memories. Despite all the difficulties they had faced in the past, they found comfort in each other's presence. Michael, who once felt devastated by betrayal and heartbreak, now began to feel at peace. However, life is not always smooth sailing. One day, Michael was faced with a major problem at work that threatened the stability of their family. A big project he was leading at the office failed, and he felt responsible for the losses incurred. Michael, who was already hurt by his past, now felt completely devastated. Anxiety and work pressure disturbed the happiness he had just found. Megan, who had always been understanding, noticed the tension that was increasingly visible in Michael. One night, after Michael returned from work looking tired and anxious, Megan invited him to sit in the living room. "Michael, there's something you're hiding from me, isn't there?" Megan asked softly, looking at him intently. Michael took a deep breath, trying to process his feelings. "I feel like a failure, Megan. This project. I feel like I neglected my responsibilities, and now everything is ruined. I don't know how I can fix everything. I'm afraid this will ruin everything." Megan looked at him gently, holding his hand. "We've been through a lot, Michael. We'll find a way out of this work problem together. Remember, we can't face it alone." Michael was silent for a moment. He found it difficult to accept the fact that he couldn't handle everything on his own. He was still used to the old pattern of solving all problems with his own strength. But Megan, patiently and sincerely, made him understand that they were a team and there was nothing wrong with seeking help or sharing the burden. Michael, I'm here for you, and I want you to know that we can get through this together, Megan continued, her voice full of confidence. Megan's words touched Michael's heart, and for the first time in weeks, he felt the weight on his shoulders lighten a little. He realized that he didn't have to bear this burden alone. Megan gave him space to talk about his fears and failures without feeling judged or abandoned. After that night, they both planned steps to overcome Michael's work problems. With Megan's support, Michael sought solutions to overcome the crisis at the office and talked to his colleagues to find a way out. Slowly, the project that was initially threatened with failure began to show signs of hope. Michael began to feel more confident, knowing that he had someone who supported him unconditionally. At the same time, their relationship grew deeper. Michael felt that he had truly found true love, not based on need or desire, but on a deep understanding and sincerity that strengthened each other. He realized that love does not always come in a beautiful way, but often grows from a relationship full of challenges and trials. A few months later, Michael and Megan celebrated the birth of their daughter, Grace. When Grace was born, Michael felt like his life was complete. He looked at his newborn daughter's face, and for the first time, he felt like he had truly found pure happiness. Grace became a symbol of the true love he found after going through difficult times. Megan, who had always been by his side, showed once again how much she sacrificed for their family. She was not only a loving wife, but also an amazing mother to their children. Michael felt grateful to have Megan by his side, someone who helped him rise from his despair and gave him the happiness he thought he had lost forever. With a newborn Grace, Michael and Megan realized that their lives would always be full of challenges, but they were ready to face them together. They had built a family full of love and understanding, and that was more than enough for Michael. He knows that true love does not come easily, but is something that must be nurtured and maintained, even through difficult times. Michael and Megan, despite their troubled past, now have a future full of hope. Their days are now filled with simple joys, laughing with their children, sharing stories at night, and planning for a better future. Michael finally realized that true love doesn't need to be proven with beautiful words, but is present in every action and undeniable reality. The first year with Megan and their children passed quickly. Michael felt his life had changed completely. Although the past, filled with betrayal and pain, still left its mark, he began to feel a deeper peace. Sometimes, when he saw Grace, who had started walking, or heard his children's laughter, Michael smiled to himself. He felt lucky to have been given the opportunity to create new, beautiful memories after going through so much pain. One afternoon, as they sat in the living room enjoying a cup of coffee, Michael thought about his life's journey. He looked at Megan, who was helping Grace play with puzzles at the table, and his heart was filled with gratitude. Nothing could change his past, but he realized that every step he had taken, every suffering he had experienced, had shaped him into a stronger and wiser person. However, this peaceful life was suddenly shaken when Michael received news from an old lawyer. It turned out that Nora, his ex-wife, had contacted him again to discuss something important. Michael felt unexpected tension when he heard Nora's name mentioned again. Even though he had tried to forget the past, it stirred up his feelings once more. Curious and anxious, Michael agreed to meet with the lawyer. As they sat together in the office, the lawyer handed him an important document. "This concerns the custody of the children," explained the lawyer, handing him a document that appeared to contain a petition from Nora. Michael was shocked. After a painful divorce, Nora had apparently filed for full custody of their two children. Michael felt devastated. He had been fighting for his new family, and now he had to face the fact that Nora wanted to change everything again. The decision to fight this custody petition would require even more effort. Although he felt relieved that he now had a happy family, thoughts of the past and what he had to face rekindled his anxiety. After several days of contemplation, Michael decided to talk to Megan about the problem. He knew he had to face it calmly and openly. "Megan, I don't know what to do," Michael said in a heavy voice. "Nora has filed for full custody of our children. I know this will be very difficult, but I can't let that happen." Megan looked at him intently, her soft hand stroking Michael's. "Michael, I know this is hard, but we've been through many trials together. We'll get through this too, just like we always have. I'll support you no matter what happens." Megan's words gave Michael some peace. He felt stronger with Megan's support. They were both determined to face the future, no matter how difficult the journey would be. Michael knew that even though life presented unexpected challenges, he would not let his past ruin the happiness he had built with his new family. Their struggle to retain custody of their children continued for several months. Every step felt difficult, but Michael felt increasingly confident that he had made the right decision to protect his family. With Megan's support and his children's enthusiasm, he remained steadfast even as the challenges grew. During this struggle, Michael realized that life is not just about avoiding difficulties, but about how we respond to them. With every obstacle he faced, he learned to accept reality with an open heart. Their struggle gave Michael a deep insight into his own strength and the power of love. Finally, the court's decision came, and Michael successfully retained custody of his children. He felt relieved, but more than that, he felt closer to his new family. They celebrated this small victory with sincere happiness, knowing that they would always have each other, no matter what the future held. Michael learned that life doesn't always go according to plan, and sometimes we have to accept bitter realities. However, true love comes not only in beautiful moments, but also in the difficulties we face together. And with Megan by his side, Michael felt ready to face whatever was to come, because he knew that together they had the strength to get through anything. Years passed, and Michael's life became more stable. After a long struggle filled with difficulties, he could now feel a little relieved. With Megan by his side and his children growing up happily, he realized that true happiness was no longer about great achievements or avoiding problems, but about how he lived his life with love, acceptance, and the courage to face all challenges. Even though major challenges such as divorce and the battle for child custody were behind him, Michael still felt there was something he had yet to achieve. He didn't want his life to just go around in circles, even though he was satisfied with the family and relationships he had built. There was a greater desire within him, a desire to have a greater impact on the people around him, especially his children. One morning, after breakfast with his family, Michael sat in the living room with a cup of coffee. He pondered his future and what he could do beyond being a good father and husband. "Megan," he said, breaking the silence, "I'm thinking about starting to contribute more to the community. I want to do something that can have a bigger impact, whether it's in education, health, or anything else I can do to help others." Megan looked at him with a warm smile. "I know, Michael. I see your passion to continue growing, and I believe that whatever you choose, you will succeed. I fully support you." Michael felt empowered by Megan's support. He began to devise several ideas to contribute to the community, from social programs for underprivileged children to collaborations with nonprofit organizations focused on empowering women and families. Michael knew that even though their lives had been through many trials, now was the time to give more kindness to the world around them. At the same time, Michael began teaching his children the values he had learned throughout his life. He taught them to be brave in the face of adversity, to always have empathy, and to never give up on their dreams. Every day was a new opportunity to grow and learn, and Michael was proud to give them a strong foundation for their future. When Megan became pregnant with their second child, Michael felt his heart fill with even more gratitude. The presence of cheerful Grace, along with the arrival of her future sibling, strengthened his determination to build a better future. They prepared their home for the arrival of a new family member, striving to create a loving and comfortable environment for their children. These small joys, in the form of their children's laughter, Megan's hugs, and their hard work to build a better family, gave Michael an immeasurable sense of satisfaction. He realized that true happiness does not come with luxury or great achievements. True happiness comes from relationships built with love, patience, and sincerity. At night, After the children were asleep and the house felt quiet, Michael and Megan sat together on the back porch, enjoying a cup of tea. They talked about the future, about how they wanted to give their family the best, and about the small dreams they hoped would come true. Michael looked at Megan with love, feeling more alive than ever before. "Thank you for being here with me, Megan," he said, holding her hand. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You gave me the love I thought I had lost. We've been through so much, and now I know I'll never face life alone again." Megan smiled and gently returned his grip. "We still have a long journey ahead, Michael. But the most important thing is that we're always together. We've already gone through the hardest part, and now we'll keep walking together." Michael felt calm. Outside, the stars were shining brightly, and in his heart, he felt a happiness greater than ever before. He knew that true love didn't have to be perfect, but came in the form of understanding, togetherness, and trust. Now, he was ready to step into the future with the family he loved, with the confidence that no matter what happened, they would always have each other.